The fact is, we had 4 dead Americans. Was it because of a protest, or was it because of guys out for a walk one night who decided they'd go kill some Americans? What difference at this point does it make?
The committee's labors to uncover what happened prior, during, and after the attack matter. It matters to me personally, and it matters to my colleagues, at the Department of State.
Eric Nordstrom, one of the witnesses today, testifying at the House hearing on Benghazi. A lot to talk about. Let's bring in our panel. Steve Hayes, senior writer for the Weekly Standard. Mara Liasson, national political correspondent of National Public Radio, and syndicated columnist Charles Krauthammer. Okay, overview first of all, Charles.
Well, I think we're getting something of an answer to what Hillary had said in that quote. She added at the end, it's our job to figure out what happened, as opposed to what difference. Well, now, from all the testimony that we've heard today, it looks as if the job of the State Department, high officials in the State Department, was to control or to suppress what had happened. And that is extremely important.
One of the interesting back and forth moments, Mara, happened about the talking points. Take a listen to this. This is Representative Gowdy.
Would a highly decorated career diplomat have told you or Washington had there been a demonstration outside his facility that day?
Yes, sir, he would have.
Did he mention one word about a protest or a demonstration?
No, sir, he did not.
So fast forward, Mr. Hicks, to the Sunday talk shows and Ambassador Susan Rice. She blamed this attack on a video. In fact, she did it 5 different times. What was your reaction to that?
I was stunned. My jaw dropped, and I was embarrassed.
A lot of talk about that element, Mara.
I think that was the most dramatic moment of the day. The talking points is kind of a separate issue. There's the question of whether enough was done and the right decisions were made to protect the diplomats and to react as soon as the attacks began. Then there's the question of how they described them. And now there is a lot of evidence that they knew before Ambassador Rice went on television that it wasn't a spontaneous protest based on this video. And now the White House says that was the information they had at the time. You know, as soon as they got more information, they corrected it. But it was in the heat of a campaign, and you did have Susan Rice going on many, many TV shows repeating these talking points.
Right. About talking points, Jay Carney, who's talked about it before, was asked about it today with the new revelations and the talking points, Steve Hayes, that you put in the Weekly Standing with your reporting.
What remains the case is that the intelligence community, CIA, drafted these talking points and redrafted these talking points. The fact that there are inputs is always the case in a process like this. But the only edits made by anyone here at the White House were stylistic and non-substantive. They corrected the description of the building or the facility in Benghazi from consulate to diplomatic facility and the like.
Stylistic and non-substantive.
Yeah, I mean, what Jay Carney said there is demonstrably untrue. We have the talking points. We've seen them. We've seen the changes that were made. I mean, there were dramatic changes that came out of this meeting, the Deputies Committee meeting, top Obama administration officials on the morning of September 15th. They took out references to Islamic extremists. The talking points in that meeting were basically rewritten, and to a certain extent, the night before by political appointees of the White House. So what you had were talking points provided by the CIA that looked one way going into this 24-hour interagency process, and on the other end came out looking entirely differently, wholesale rewritten. And that's not just my view. The Washington Post fact checker has made basically the same claim. So I don't know why Jay Carney would say what he said. The interesting thing out of these hearings as it relates to the talking points is that we now have another email from Beth Jones, a senior State Department official, confirming that the State Department knew on September 12th that these were attacks that at least involved Ansar al-Sharia, an al-Qaeda-linked group in Libya. She sent that email. It was circulated to a number of senior officials very close to Hillary Clinton on September 12th. And the reason that matters is because it widens the circle of people who knew that early that it was a terrorist attack involving al-Qaeda extremists, and it corroborates other independent information that we'd gotten by other means, including signals intelligence, communication intercepts of 2 al-Qaeda linked figures who were communicating, including one of those who had participated in the attack, and a CIA memo from the CIA station chief, the top intelligence official on the ground in Libya on September 12th, saying, in effect, this was an attack by Islamic extremists. So you have this from different streams of intelligence, different ways of getting it, different sourcing, and it all corroborates the same point. This was a terrorist attack conducted by extremists with links to al-Qaeda.
So it was read, the email was read at the hearing, an email from Ms. Jones, you mentioned, to Hicks, to the State Department counsel for Secretary Clinton, saying that she spoke to the Libyan ambassador, emphasized the importance of the Libyan officials making strong statements, and then when he said he suspected former Gaddafi regime elements, quote, I told him Ansar al-Sharia is affiliated with terrorists, and she goes on to point the finger at them. I do want to say, Charles, it seems like that it had a different feel today than the previous hearing. Your sense overall of how Republicans did in their questioning, how Democrats reacted, the overall atmospherics.
The Republicans knew their stuff, and they acted in a way where they were able to follow one upon the other. The Democrats were, frankly, embarrassing. All they were doing is hurling political charges. Here were State Department officials, career officials who don't have any axe to grind, who don't have any political motive here, giving facts, and the Democrats essentially ignored them and said it's an attack on Hillary. Well, this didn't start today with Hillary as the lead candidate in the next election. It started in September, October, and November, but there was still an election. Obama was the president. Hillary's election in the future was never an issue. So to pretend that this is all about Hillary and her presidential campaign, as Democrats were doing, is preposterous.
I want to play the ranking member, Elijah Cummings, his statement from the beginning of the hearing.
What we have seen over the past 2 weeks is a full-scale media campaign that is not designed to investigate what happened in a responsible and bipartisan way, but rather a launch of unfounded accusations to smear public officials. Let me be clear. I am not questioning the motives of our witnesses. I am questioning the motives of those who want to use their statements for political purposes.
Last thing, Mara, Speaker Boehner is now engaged. He put out a statement today about talking points specifically, saying this, cynically claiming that the White House bears no responsibility for the talking points because a CIA officer physically made the changes is the kind of evasion that won't fly with the American people. The question isn't who was sitting at the keyboard, it's who decided not to tell the American people the truth. The White House should make these emails public and explain to the American people their motives for stripping the talking points of critical information. It sounds, now that the Speaker has put this out, that we may be headed for a special committee.
Maybe. I think that he does have a point. Whether or not you think that what the White House did amounts to a major scandal, I think any time you have a White House spokesman saying it wasn't us, it was the intelligence community, it just looks terrible. I mean, it's their intelligence community. They're responsible for everything that happens. Any high-ranking official that goes out to speak for them, they're responsible for it. So it seems really mealy-mouthed to try to duck that.
And we also know that the intelligence community, in fact, did not say that, because we've seen what the intelligence community sent to the policymakers, and we've seen what came out on the other end.
It's the opposite of truth. The story the administration has said is, we initially thought it was a video. As new information came in, we revised it. It's the exact opposite. They initially thought, as we saw in the State Department memo, as the CIA had in the talking points, as Hicks himself had reported, initially it was a terror attack. And then what they engage in is a subtraction of the truth, a redaction, a crossing out of all the stuff about al-Qaeda, which gave an untruth. It was the exact opposite of what the administration
Well, let me continue on to the second panel. We'll wrap up the hearing. We want to talk about the response to the attack and final thoughts about this day when we come back.